It's one of the most dangerous journeys anyone can make. It's also one of the biggest economic migrations in the world. Every month, thousands from across the Horn of Africa try to reach the farms and factories of Saudi Arabia, trying to better their lives. But to do so, they must cross through to Djibouti, across the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, and then up through Yemen, where they fall prey to people traffickers and kidnappers, sexual abuse and torture. There's evidence, as Yalda Hakim reports, that the Yemeni military is involved in people trafficking and that sexual abuse. Some of the migrant stories, as you can imagine, are harrowing.
Saleh Sabri is the undertaker of Harad. Harad is a Yemeni smuggling town on the border with Saudi Arabia. For centuries, the town has thrived on gun running and drug smuggling. Now, the commodity is people. Today, they are burying an Ethiopian, another migrant found dead at the border.
كم أعد لي 200 3 4 كم مليان اللي رصاص في الحدود اللي مشنوق اللي يعني ضرب هذا جناية لأنه البحث بيجي لي قضايا جناية دخل الثلاجة وفاة طبيعي مقبرة.
The journey that ends in death for so many begins here, 300 miles to the south. This man is a people trafficker. He ferries migrants across the Red Sea. He says his smuggling ring will make $300 per migrant for the trip from Africa to Yemen. He must pay a cut of that to the Yemeni military.
قيادة الجيش، قيادة الأمن السياسي، قيادة الأمن العام تأخذ أجرتها معها مندوب لكي نواصل العمل. إذا ما تخالفنا أو ما أعطيناها الحق هذا يأذن إحنا يجي الطاقم يأخذ إحنا.
He carries 40 people in his boat. They risk dehydration and exposure. Some boats are so full that people suffocate. The migrants are desperate for work and the promise of a better life in Saudi Arabia. But first, they must cross Yemen. Criminal gangs roam freely. Robbery, abuse and sexual exploitation are commonplace. And migrants face being caught, tortured and sold for profit. Thousands arrive on these shores every month. These pictures show soldiers combing the beach. They will take the migrants to camps run by the Red Cross. But we have evidence that some soldiers are working with the people smugglers. Haile experienced the shakedown. He said those that can pay are released, but those without money are sold to kidnappers, kidnappers who torture. Haile was held in what is known as a torture camp. Thousands of migrants are being kidnapped and beaten in torture camps across Yemen. Haile was tortured until his family paid the ransom to release him. Getting past the beach is just the first step in this extraordinary journey. Saudi Arabia is still a 300-mile walk through the desert. We met these migrants on their way to the border town of Harad. They have been walking for 40 days. And where are you going?
Saudi.
What do you expect to find when you get there?
المزرعة ولا بقر ولا إبل ولا غنم كله على كيف.
Have you had any trouble so far making this journey?
أيوة يمسكوا يفتشوا هنا قدام يروح ما في زفل إلا على طول الزفل يروح تعال يقول له بعدين هنا يسوي جلس بعدين يسوي تفتيش يشيل فلوس.
Yemen is a failing state. The turbulence of the Arab Spring led to the ousting of the president and an erosion of government power. In this vacuum, the migrants are able to cross Yemen. But gangs of kidnappers and torturers can also operate at will. Haftan Ika had made the journey with his friends. They'd come looking for work, hoping to support their families. They were kidnapped. His father was told he needed to pay $300 to release him. He was told to borrow the money and then wire it to the kidnappers. This footage shows the inside of a torture camp. It was shot by Médecins Sans Frontières during a series of government raids in April. Over 1,600 migrants were freed. Many had been beaten. Some had had their fingernails pulled out or their tongues partially cut off. Others said they'd been beaten with pipes, burned with cigarettes, or had liniment poured in their eyes. The new gang that now had Haftan wanted another $250. His father couldn't borrow any more money. None of the families could. Haftan is 23. He will never walk again. Haftan, like Haile, is now at this centre in Harad. Inside these walls, the migrants are safe. The centre is full of people who have been tortured. It is run by the International Organization for Migration.
It is a humanitarian crisis. I think the main thing that we need to provide them with is a voluntary return. Everybody wants to go to their country of origin. They are shocked by the reality that they have faced.
Show me your henna. Which one's the henna?
Efta is 17. She walked 300 miles over the Ethiopian mountains to Djibouti. There she paid the traffickers to ferry her to Yemen. She and her friends were captured on the beach by kidnappers.
هذه شفنا بعيوننا إنهم يسوون يضربوها إذا ما يقدروا يتعذبوها يقولوا أوسك إذا أنت ما نامت ما يقولها يخوفها أنا كمان مثله يعني يخوفوني كذا يعني وقتها نجلس نفكر.
Efta was kept at the camp for 3 months. She was too ashamed by what the gang was doing to call her parents and ask for money. So she was raped every day.
أيوة يحركوا هنا رجال يعني حرمة يتصبوا رجال يحركوا وين يضربوا ضرب يكسروا عيون يطالعوا كل شيء فيه يعني شافناه بعيننا.
Then I asked Efta who the kidnappers were.
أيوة مثل عسكري لابسين هذه ملابس عسكري فكرنا إن إحنا عسكري يعني ما فكرنا إنه يطلع هنا مش وشنا هذه مشاكل كلها.
Asma is 16. She got all the way to the Saudi border before she was arrested by Yemeni soldiers.
How do you know that money was exchanged? Did you see it?
ራሱ ብቻውን ይጠራዋል እኛን ቤት ይዘጋንና እሱን ጠርቶ ከዛ ብር ይሰጣዋል ከዛ እኛን ደግሞ አሳውሉ ይላል ትርፍ ያገኛል ብቻ ንግድ ማለት ነው.
Do you know how much money you were sold for?
ስንት ገንዘብ እንደሆነ አያውቅም ግን እኛን በኢትዮጵያ 50 ሺህ ብር አሳውሉ ከዛ ትሄዳላችሁ ሱዑድ ትገባላችሁ አሉን.
She was raped by 2, sometimes 3 men every day for 2 months. She got out because one of her captors, she says, felt pity for her.
I spoke to some of the people who run this camp and they say they've heard other stories like this, that men in Yemeni military fatigues captured women, sold them to rapists and in some cases raped them themselves.
We requested an interview with the Yemeni government about the treatment of migrants, but our request was declined. There are 200 torture camps in this part of Yemen alone. A local judge offers us safe passage to visit one. One of his soldiers accompanies us for our own safety. As we arrive, one of the guards runs off. He's gone to find the owner. Inside, there are 2 guards and 5 migrants. We ask them if they've been abused. I ask, have they tried to escape? We spot the entrance to a small room at the edge of the compound.
Can we go inside?
The soldier says this is where they take the women. He says what is going on behind the door could be haram, meaning forbidden.
We've just been told the room here is what the torturers use for rape. We can hear the sound of a man and a woman in the room.
A man appears with a pistol on his belt. He is the owner of the camp.
Does torture exist in this farm? And are there any women in this farm? Shukran.
We are escorted out. We do not know for sure what was taking place in the room at the back, but the men we spoke to were being held against their will. We then spoke to a senior local police officer. We told him what we had seen. The next day, all the migrants in the camp were released. This is the Saudi border. These mountains, the final barrier to the Promised Land. Behind the ridges are thermal imaging cameras, electric fencing, and a flood-lit security barrier. It is now an almost impossible crossing.
አይደለም ለምን ትገባለህ አንተ ሌላ ሰራተኛ ነው ብለው ነው የደበደቡኝ የሮጥ ደግሞ መግደል እንደዚህ
Haile had survived the torture camp. He'd walked 300 miles across the desert. He was almost there.
ሄጄ ሮጥኩኝ ብሮጥ ደግሞ ከ2 ሰዓት 3 ሰዓት ያዙኝ ከሱ በኋላ ያዙን እሳቸው ለዛ ፈሰጂኝ አንጠለጥለኝ ደበደቡኝ ሁለተኛ ሰቅለው ጣሉኝ እሳቸውም ጣሉና ፈቱኝና ሄዱ ሌላ ወታደር መጥቶ ወሰደኝ ለሕክምና
Haile hung from that tree for 2 days. He remembers very little, but he thinks it was soldiers who cut him down and drove him to a Saudi hospital. He was so badly injured that when he awoke, doctors had amputated his left arm. He thinks his friends are probably dead. Despite the fact that so few make it, there is no sign the flow of migrants is ebbing. And people trafficking in Yemen is worth tens of millions of dollars.
If you're looking at thousands of people and you look at the amount of money that's going back and forth, it must have been huge for these numbers to be here. Human trafficking is one of the most profitable businesses in the world now, and if you can see the numbers, it seems that there is big business going on.
People smuggling generates profit at every stage of the journey. Everyone has a stake, from the Ethiopian brokers through the Yemeni military to the guards at the Saudi border. So stopping this will require serious international effort.
For the moment, those efforts are just beginning. But still, the Ethiopians come. 40,000 migrants arrived in Yemen during the first 5 months of this year. Those new migrants will still head for the Saudi border. They will still face exploitation, beatings and rape. And Saleh will continue to bury the dead.
Yalda Hakim reporting there from Yemen for us.